Welcome to America! Take off your clothes! Everything! Now! Shouted a guard at Ellis Island in a language the immigrants didn't understand, but the gesture was crystal clear. In the early 20th century, thousands of immigrants from Eastern and Southern Europe arrived daily at Ellis Island, exhausted from their transatlantic journey but full of hope for a new life. They said America was a land of freedom, yet here, they strip us like criminals, recalled a passenger from Poland. They had traveled in overcrowded shipholds, sleeping on wooden planks, eating dry food, sharing every inch with strangers, all for a chance to reach American soil. But instead of the promised land of opportunity, they were met with lines, orders, inspections, and procedures that many found deeply humiliating. First, they were forced to undress completely without explanation, while their clothes were taken for chemical treatment, and they themselves were lined up for sanitation. "They don't ask you, they wash you," a guard muttered, waving the newcomers forward. Disinfectants were sprayed on their skin, pungent solutions that made their eyes sting, their throats burn, and their nerves fray. If anyone showed signs of lice or skin conditions, their hair was shaved off. Not just men, but women and even children. "She's just a little girl," a father cried as a health worker began buzzing off his daughter's hair. These measures were officially explained as disease prevention, aimed at stopping trachoma, tuberculosis, typhus, but the real motivations went further. To American authorities of the time, dirt wasn't just a health risk. It was seen as a sign of poverty, backwardness, ignorance, and cultural inferiority. "Cleanliness is where civilization begins," wrote one doctor in an immigration board report. Particular scrutiny was given to villagers and poor immigrants from Eastern Europe, seen as filthy, uncivilized, and a threat to the nation's identity. "If they want to live among us, they should learn to bathe first," said one inspector during a city hygiene inspection. Teaching these people American hygiene norms was viewed as the first step to civilizing them and making them fit for society. Cleanliness wasn't just a health standard. It became a social filter. If you looked neat, you were more acceptable. After the Ellis Island ordeal, the pressure to stay clean continued in everyday American life. In immigrant neighborhoods, especially in cities like New York, Chicago, and Boston, public bathhouses were set up to educate newcomers on American standards of hygiene. "Free entrance, soap, towel, and hot water provided," read a sign outside a bathhouse in New York's Lower East Side. On the surface, it looked like help, like care, like opportunity. But for local reformers, it was less about kindness and more about re-education. They need to understand, smelling like sweat isn't freedom. It's a problem, said a social worker to a local newspaper. People were taught how to wash their hands, scrub their nails, wash their clothes, and in what order to use soap and water. Sometimes bathhouses offered hygiene classes, especially for women, teaching them how to care for babies, wash diapers, clean cookware, and boil bottles. Some came for practical reasons. They had no bathrooms at home. Others arrived cautiously, ashamed or annoyed that strangers told them how to live. "My grandmother bathed once a week and nobody died," said a young Hungarian worker as a health officer showed him how to brush his teeth. Hygiene control reached the schools, where immigrant children were inspected every morning before class. Teachers checked hands, ears, necks, fingernails, and sent children home for even minor signs of dirt. "Why are your nails dirty? Come back when you learn to wash," kids were told before they could even sit down. Sometimes teachers sent notes home urging parents to teach basic hygiene, and in serious cases, they called social workers to visit the family. For many immigrant families, this was painful. In their homelands, daily bathing was either impractical or culturally unnecessary. In rural Europe, water was used mostly for ritual, during holidays, church ceremonies, or sacred moments. "We washed before meals and before communion. Bathing every day would have seemed strange," recalled a woman from a Ukrainian village, describing her early days in New York. But in American culture at the time, hygiene had already become a kind of civic ritual, a way to prove normalcy, success, and above all, belonging. Dirty clothes, body odor, stains on the face, these things marked you instantly as lower class, regardless of your work ethic or education. If you don't look clean, you won't get hired, no one will smile at you in a shop, and no one will trust you with a child, warned a pamphlet for new immigrants. Advertising reinforced this idea. Soap, deodorant, toothpaste were marketed as tickets to respectability. Smell clean, and they'll love you, promised a poster with a smiling, bright-eyed American girl. Over time, these norms took hold, first from fear of rejection, then from habit, and eventually from the desire to fit in. In the late 1800s, only about 3% of tenement apartments in New York had bathrooms. By the 1930s, that number had grown to almost 90%. But for immigrants, the road to that standard was unnatural and often painful. Less adaptation than pressure, surveillance, and forced compliance, all masked as progress. American society at the time truly believed that the fight against filth was more than about disease. It was a fight for moral order and a border between us and them. And for millions who arrived chasing the American dream, the first test of belonging wasn't a job or a passport or even English. It was soap.